banana republic. The rule of law is in crisis in America. New questions have been raised about the independence of the U.S. Justice Department. Accusations grow that Attorney General William Barr is using the department to do President Trump's bidding. Trump, who now feels a greater sense of freedom following his Senate acquittal, has been interfering in multiple criminal cases to basically fix them on his behalf.
The entire thing has been a witch hunt.
They should be looking at all these FBI guys who got fired and demoted.
Everybody sees what's going on in the Justice Department. I always put justice now with quotes.
We have the worst laws of any country anywhere in the world.
James Comey was unfair to the people of this country. I think what he did was a disgrace.
All these investigators, they're Democrats.
To be honest with you, I have to get rid of judges. We're bucking a court system that never, ever rules for us.
I think Bruce Orr is a disgrace, and Mr. Mueller has a lot of conflicts also.
Trump regards himself as the king, setting the law of the land.
We are seeing creeping authoritarianism here in the U.S. It started sort of slow in the beginning with Donald Trump acting as the president. He really has never honored the idea of the rule of law. He envisions himself as something akin to a dictator, if not even a godly figure, like a king.
Critics say the president is openly corrupting the judicial system, using it to target his enemies and protect his friends.
President Trump is unleashed, and that's why there are growing fears of something called democratic backsliding. This is a term used in political science, a term used to describe the erosion of institutions that sustain democracy. Another way to put it is creeping authoritarianism, a move toward autocracy. Now that's a word we are increasingly seeing being tied to President Trump.
Is Trump eroding the independence of the U.S. judiciary? What are the implications for the rule of law?
The important thing here, to try to keep the rule of law intact, it's critical to keep the Attorney General's office and the Department of Justice independent from someone like Donald Trump as president. They are supposed to be operating under the entire concept. They're the very heart of the rule of law. And what's happened is Donald Trump now has captured the Attorney General's office and much of the Department of Justice.
The crisis keeps unfolding on multiple fronts. It began in 2017 before William Barr was even appointed Attorney General. In May of that year, Trump fired FBI Director James Comey, who had refused to pledge loyalty to Trump, and let go of a criminal investigation into his then National Security Advisor, Michael Flynn.
That person is not fit to be President of the United States on moral grounds.
Are you thinking President Trump's a liar?
Trump had assumed that by firing the person leading the Russia investigation, the pressure would somehow ease. But the strategy didn't work. The FBI's second-in-command, Andrew McCabe, stepped up to take charge. As the Bureau's acting director, McCabe launched 2 new investigations into Trump.
What was the true nature of the president's motivation in calling for the firing of Jim Comey?
Did you tell them that you had opened a counterintelligence investigation into President Trump?
The purpose of the briefing was to let our congressional leadership know exactly what we'd been doing. Opening a case of this nature, not something that an FBI director, not something that an acting FBI director would do by yourself, right? This was a recommendation that came to me from my team. I reviewed it with our lawyers. I discussed it at length with the Deputy Attorney General, and I told Congress what we had done.
Did anyone object?
That's the important part here, Savannah. No one objected.
Naturally, President Trump fixated on McCabe as an enemy, publicly hounding the FBI to fire him. McCabe was indeed fired in March 2018, a day before his scheduled retirement. But the president didn't stop there. He publicly demanded that McCabe be criminally charged and put in jail. Under Attorney General Barr, the Justice Department opened an investigation into McCabe, just as Trump had demanded.
You know, It was traumatic to leave the FBI, certainly in the way that I did, and that's been tough to live with. And the added insult and suspicion that comes with being under criminal investigation just made the entire experience a million times worse.
Despite pressure from the White House, there didn't seem to be adequate grounds for the DOJ to charge and convict McCabe, who has denied any wrongdoing and called himself the victim of political vengeance. The department finally decided to close the case this month.
It is to have this horrific black cloud that's been hanging over me and my family for almost the last 2 years. To have that finally lifted is just an unbelievable. It's a relief that I'm not sure I can really explain to you adequately. It's just a very emotional moment for my whole family.
A federal judge slammed the White House for acting like a banana republic by dictating who should be prosecuted. U.S. District Court Judge Reggie Walton said people at the top were undermining the integrity of the judicial process. Is Trump turning the United States into a banana republic?
Way above the creeping authoritarianism we've been seeing over the last 3 years is indeed warranting labeling our justice system as getting close to a banana republic. Once again, I want to reiterate what's made the U.S. system of justice more or less strong is the idea that it operated under the rule of law. And it was not a personal police force of the President of the United States. William Barr has made it very clear who he's allegiant to. And it is not to the United States, it is not to the rule of law, it is to Donald Trump.
The Attorney General has given Trump yet another huge gift. Barr has ordered the re-examination of some high-profile criminal cases that Trump cares a lot about, including that of Mike Flynn, his former national security advisor. Flynn is awaiting sentencing for lying to the FBI.
Trump's former national security advisor, Michael Flynn, arriving for sentencing after pleading guilty to lying, expecting there was a very good chance that he would walk out with no prison time. Instead, facing a furious judge who said Flynn had sold his country out. The sentencing was then delayed. ABC's Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas with the reason why.
Now, the Justice Department, on behalf of President Trump, is intervening in unusual ways to help Flynn, not only by reviewing the case, but also by pressuring federal prosecutors to recommend a lighter sentence for the president's friend. This comes on the heels of interference by the Attorney General to overrule the DOJ prosecutors in pushing for a lighter sentence for another Trump crony, Roger Stone.
I have made it clear I will not testify against the president because I would have to bear false witness against him. I am one of his oldest friends. I am a fervent supporter of the president. I think he is doing a great job of making America great again.
A longtime advisor to Trump, Stone was convicted of witness tampering and lying to Congress. Prosecutors had recommended a stiff sentence of 7 to 9 years for Stone. But Trump insisted it was unfair and a disgrace.
I thought the recommendation was ridiculous. I thought the whole prosecution was ridiculous. And I look at others that haven't been prosecuted, or I don't know where it is now. But when you see that, I thought it was an insult to our country, and it shouldn't happen. And we'll see what goes on there. But that was a horrible aberration. These are I guess the same Mueller people that put everybody through hell, and I think it's a disgrace.
Subsequently, Barr disavowed the sentencing recommendation, and the Justice Department asked for a lighter sentence for Stone. Congressional Democrats have called for an investigation into the matter. Under pressure, Barr pleaded with the president to stop tweeting on the cases.
To have public statements and tweets made about the department about our people in the department, our men and women here, about cases pending in the department, and about judges before whom we have cases, make it impossible for me to do my job and to assure the courts and the prosecutors in the department that we're doing our work with integrity.
President Trump responded with another tweet, saying he had the legal right to intervene in criminal cases at the Justice Department. Does the U.S. President have the authority to order the Attorney General to open or shut a case? What happens to the separation of powers?
It clearly shows that we are losing the separation of powers. The Department of Justice and the Attorney General's office is supposed to be independent of the president and operate under the rule of law. That's so shattering to the Department of Justice itself and to the office of the Attorney General.
Attorney General Barr has been an outspoken defender of President Trump and has aggressively sought to implement his agenda, prompting accusations from Democrats and former Justice Department officials that he is politicizing the judicial system. In a public statement, more than 2,000 former DOJ officials have called on Barr to resign for doing Trump's personal bidding.
To the administration of fair justice and asks for his resignation. I'll read to you a bit more from the letter. These former officials write that the president's public comments on Justice Department matters have gravely damaged the department's credibility, but Mr. Barr's actions in doing the president's personal bidding unfortunately speak louder than his words. Those actions and the damage they have done to the Justice Department's reputation for integrity and the rule of law require Mr. Barr to resign.
Why did you sign this letter, and how significant is this?
One of the most important norms we have is that our Justice Department prosecutes based on the evidence and on established policy. This is what, for 200 years, has given the American people the comfort that we will not prosecute people for political purposes, and we won't let people off the hook for political purposes. There is a strict protocol that's been around at least 40 years that governs contacts between the White House and the Department of Justice precisely to limit White House influence on the career prosecutors at the Department of Justice who bring these cases.
Under William Barr, the Justice Department has also tried to quash a whistleblower complaint about Trump's dealings with Ukraine that led to his impeachment. Trump, who was acquitted by his Republican allies in the Senate earlier this month, has become more emboldened than ever.
What has really emboldened Donald Trump in the last couple weeks was the impeachment trial itself, where the Senate Republicans marched almost in lockstep behind Donald Trump, refusing to recognize the evidence, refusing to deal fairly with the entire trial, and letting everyone know from the very beginning, before the trial even started, that they were going to let him off scot-free.
The cases of Andrew McCabe, Michael Flynn, and Roger Stone show a disturbing pattern: that the Justice Department is essentially questioning anyone who is trying to investigate President Trump or his aides. The president's allies in Congress are doing exactly the same thing, leveraging the powers of government to help their friends and hurt their political enemies. What are the implications for America as a nation and its institutions?
Let's just call it flat-out authoritarianism that Donald Trump represents. And when he was able to finally capture the Department of Justice and the Attorney General's office with William Barr, that has pretty much spelled, the end of the rule of law, at least in this case. Everything is going to ride upon the neck of the upcoming election. If half of America goes for that and reelects Donald Trump, then I do fear that we are at the end of our democratic career here in the United States.
Attorney General William Barr said in an interview today that he hopes President Trump will stop tweeting about Justice Department criminal cases like that of former advisor Roger Stone, because it makes it impossible for him to do his job. And then Trump immediately tweeted, "You mean your job of covering up my crimes? Is that what you mean?"
Militarization of the streets. President Trump's authoritarian tendencies have put him at odds with a number of states and cities that oppose his policies. The president is deploying armed tactical units to so-called sanctuary cities to track down and arrest undocumented immigrants. The elite tactical units, trained to carry out dangerous missions, are being sent to cities like Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York that have limited their cooperation with immigration and customs enforcement officers.
Sanctuary cities that get Americans killed, they're immoral. When you have sanctuary cities, you have crime.
The agents will act as the SWAT team of the Border Patrol. Their primary charge has been pursuing drug traffickers on the US-Mexico border, where violence often breaks out.
BORTAC, as you said, it's an elite portion of the Border Patrol. They really act like a SWAT team. They're people who are chosen from individual Border Patrol units. They undergo specific training. It's similar to Army Rangers or to Special Forces. They're sniper certified. They have grenades. They're called flashbangs that can obscure what you can see when they break into your home. You know, they carry large weapons. So they're very much a militaristic squad from within the Border Patrol.
Trump has flagged sanctuary cities as a danger to public safety and characterized immigrants as violent criminals. The deployment of tactical forces will undoubtedly escalate tensions between the administration and sanctuary states. Rights groups were quick to denounce the announcement. The American Civil Liberties Union said the policy will put lives at risk by further militarizing our streets. Why is Trump going to such lengths to crack down on immigration?
This is largely electoral politics in the United States. This is the presidential election period, and it's the funny season. This has nothing to do with the actual issue of immigration. Now, mind you, I don't agree with Trump's policy on deportation, but what's happening around this issue of sanctuary cities and sanctuary states and so on is electoral politics.
The Justice Department, which is accused of doing Trump's bidding in criminal cases, has filed lawsuits against California, New Jersey, and a county in Washington, alleging their policies make it difficult for federal authorities to implement immigration laws.
The only authority in the country that is vested with the power and the responsibility of dealing with that problem is the federal government. No state can deal with it alone.
The DOJ lawsuits target California for banning privately run detention centers and New Jersey for limiting cooperation with federal immigration authorities. They also target King County in Washington for prohibiting federal contractors from using the Seattle airport to deport immigrants. Similar to his 2016 campaign, President Trump has made the issue of immigration a cornerstone of his re-election campaign in 2020.
Unemployment among Hispanic Americans, where we're doing really well. You know why? Because they want a strong border. They want it because they understand the border better than anybody. They want that strong border. They want that wall that's being built right now.
Trump has proven to be one of the most anti-immigrant presidents in U.S. history. Trump's harsh immigration agenda, from his Muslim travel ban to his family separation policy, is clearly driven by racism. But invoking racism alone is not enough to explain what many call Trump's war on immigration. What are the deep causes of the immigration crisis?
The problem with the drugs in countries like Mexico or Central America or Colombia is the same as the problem of immigration. These people have had their livelihoods destroyed by the policies of Wall Street and the IMF. And what should be done to really solve the problem of drugs and immigration that does exist, it's a real problem, is that the United States should cooperate with China in their Belt and Road Initiative to bring high technology infrastructure development to this entire region, which is so desperately lacking in such production. It's the same problem in the Middle East. If you destroy the Middle East with bombings and raids and wars, you create a situation where the young people of those areas have no alternative. They have no life.
In order to become an American citizen, immigrants are supposed to pledge their allegiance to the United States. One way of doing that is by joining the U.S. Armed Forces and serving the country. The U.S. military has long recruited immigrants through a special Pentagon program promising an expedited path to citizenship.
They tend to be very high performers. They tend to be language important. They tend to be ambassadors from their birth country, and all that weaves into a picture of a young man or young woman who has a lot to contribute to the armed forces of the United States.
At the beginning of the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003, around 38,000 of those in uniform were not American citizens. In the following years, immigrants were sent to fight and die for the U.S. in Iraq and Afghanistan.
I didn't get my clearance, and I asked why, and they refused to tell me why.
The U.S. Army has informed some immigrant recruits that they pose security risks because they have relatives abroad or because the Defense Department has not done background checks on them. Even worse, some immigrant veterans who have risked their lives fighting for the U.S. have been deported after returning from combat.
They're building so many monuments of us fighting. That's not helping us. Put us here and then forget the ones that are living. And then now it's worse. We're getting deported. It's a disgrace and dishonor to us, brothers.
Is the United States taking advantage of immigrants?
The United States is definitely taking advantage of immigrants, and it's scandalous and unacceptable what's being done. But it's also the case that this military-industrial complex, as Eisenhower correctly referred to it, is taking advantage of U.S. citizens as well, where you have people, again, out of economic desperation, principally minorities and impoverished people, join the armed forces to go fight wars for no purpose, that are totally destructive, that are not defensive of sovereignty or the development of those countries. And these people come back, and even though they are American citizens, they get thrown on the trash heap as well. Just like immigrants are thrown on the trash heap, just in a slightly different way. It's a slightly different trash heap.
Pentagon data show that between 2013 and 2018, more than 44,000 non-citizens enlisted in the U.S. military. But the Army has recently discharged some of the immigrant recruits who were promised citizenship. For many, the rejection has thrown their immigration status in limbo.
Immigration is the subject that Trump campaigned on the hardest, and as president, his tone hasn't exactly softened.
I told my people yesterday, our country's full. We're full. Our system's full. Our country is full. Can't come in. Our country is full. What can you do? We can't handle anymore. Our country is full. Can't come in. I'm sorry.
He's right. Our country is totally full. I mean, just take a look at it. The thing is absolutely packed. There is simply no room here. I mean, maybe if one of these guys dies or something, but until then, there's just nothing we can do. But look, it is obviously not that simple.